is when it works. Okay, wonderful. Looks like we are good. If you are joining us on Zoom, if you can just let me know by letting me know in the chat that you can hear me, that would be great. Otherwise, we'll be checking in here with our folks live on social media. So let's see how we are doing. If you can hear me, let me know by giving me a big yes so that we can get started. And while we wait for those yeses, hi y'all, I am Sean Glaze. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the Chief Consulting Officer for Inclusive Data. That is one of the hats that I wear. I am also the research co-lead and research director of Black Brilliance Research Project, which is a research collaborative that is Black queer led. We work with community to really push and create our solutions and do some research. I see, okay, great. I see yeses. I see hey. I see hello. Thank you so much for letting me know you can hear me. I'm also here on Zoom. So thank you to the Zoom folks who are letting me know that you can hear me as well. Let's go ahead and get started. What are we talking about today? We are talking about a $48 billion opportunity to have our communities tell a funder how to spend the money, because that's what they asked for. They asked for some feedback on how they want to spend these dollars. And I have been working very hard with a group that has been putting together recommendations. We've been styling them all pretty for social media. So you're going to see those posted on the Black Brilliance Research Project social media. But for now, I want to go over some of the key things that we're advocating for. So first and foremost, this is a $48 billion opportunity, billion with a B. Can you say $48 billion? Go ahead and tag someone that you know needs to hear this conversation, because today we are finally breaking down like what we are pushing for, what we are advocating for, what we are highlighting and uplifting in public comment. I will be able to, okay, I see some likes, great. I will be able to send this out to those of you who registered. Hi, Dr. Kathy Tatum. I can see your name. Everyone else's says Facebook user. So, but I can see that there are quite a few of y'all who are watching now. Go ahead and tag people that you know need to hear this conversation. I'll do a very quick recap. The overall picture is that this funder, NTIA, oh, hi, Dr. Clark. NTIA has $48 billion and they want to know how to spend it. They want to know where to direct their dollars. They want to know, what they should require people who receive these funds do. And by people, I really mean like states. It could be nonprofits. It could be cooperatives. There's so many different folks that could get funded. And I have been hosting daily workshops about this. So many workshops that actually my phone is dead, like it's broken. I have to get a new phone. So if you were expecting to see me at a workshop and on Clubhouse or something, I can't actually use it. But thank you for showing up and showing out for me. And I see Cal's here as well. Hi, Cal Burlock. It's good to see you. Let's go ahead and just dive right in. I am going to tell y'all basically what we are writing into NTIA. I'm telling you this so that you can have some information about the kinds of things that we're asking for, not because I think you should necessarily do the same exact thing, but because I think it'll be really helpful for you to have options to know, hey, these are things I can ask a funder for. Yeah, absolutely. If there are things that I'm listing here that you think could be even stronger, I would love to hear it by letting me know in the chat. Hey, Xabra. And if there are things that you think are just like outside of your experience and you want to give us feedback on, now's your chance. So just a quick show of hands. How many of y'all, this is your very first time hearing about this opportunity? And how many of y'all have heard about this opportunity at least one time before? If this is your first time hearing about this opportunity, you can say first timer here, like I just learned about this. If you've heard me talk about this before, let me know by saying like already here. And if you're tired, you can just give me a like, boop, 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 if you've heard it before. And if you haven't heard it before, you can give me a heart so that we can do a quick little temperature check. Awesome. I see a few of y'all have heard of this before. We do have some new people, so that's cool. Awesome. Wonderful. So I'll go ahead and drop a couple of links in the chat so that y'all have them. If you're joining via social media or Zoom, I can easily share with y'all the screen. I know that some of you are joining by phone, and what I will do is I'll do my very, very best to read out what I am looking at. But for the most part, we're not going to do a step, like a line by line description. Okay. We're not going to go through and like read everything. Instead, we are going to talk about what we are advocating for. So for those of you who are super new, I am sharing my screen so that you can see. I dropped the link in the chat for those of you that are very new. And I am sharing this window here just to show you the scope of all of the documentation here. So this funder asks 36 different questions, like all these different questions about what they're looking for. The funder, again, is called the NTIA, the National Telecommunications and Information Administration. They have $48 billion that they're about to decide in a few months. And we have until tomorrow at 2 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Eastern time to tell them what we think. As I scroll through, I'm just letting you know they have a lot of questions, but they mostly boil down to how do you think we should best spend these funds? These are federal funds. How do we keep people accountable to do the things that they said they're going to do? And how do we increase access to reliable internet, affordable internet, and high-speed internet for our communities? And if you are thinking this is just about internet, you know what? That will be because I didn't say today that this is also about jobs. This is about creating jobs, especially for, using their words, women and people of color. So we are talking about workforce diversity here. And with $48 billion on the line, we all should have something to say about how to make sure these dollars actually get to the communities that they're seeking to serve, which are, they have a whole list of who they describe as underserved communities. But that list includes Black and Brown people. It includes people with disabilities. It includes a variety of people that I'll just read out so that we can just know who those folks are. And then let's see, we can do that. Just give me 1 second. Income. All right, so there are a few different places where they talk about the communities that they're trying to serve, and I will list them out. So they're looking to hear from historically marginalized and disadvantaged groups. So I'm copying that here on the Facebook and social media. And then I think there's a way for me to also share my screen on Zoom at the same time. So 1 second while I see if it'll cooperate with me. It will. Oh, thank goodness. All right, y'all. So we're looking at this together. They're looking for historically marginalized, disadvantaged groups to weigh in. Who is that? Low-income people, right? People who live in low-income households. Aging individuals, so older people, incarcerated people, veterans, people with disabilities, people who have a language barrier, people who are Black or Brown, and people who live in rural areas. So if that's you and your crew, they want to hear from you. I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but that's who they're looking to hear from. So let's talk about what we recommend. Hey, Lauren, it's good to see you. Hi, Martinez, it's good to see you. Y'all, it's so lovely to see all you people here. Let me talk to you about guidance. Okay, finally. So we are really excited about this funding opportunity, y'all, because it is going to create more internet, faster internet, more reliable internet. It's going to create funding opportunities for us to build our own internet networks. And it's also going to allow for creation of a lot of different kinds of jobs. And through conversations with y'all, we have spoken to over 500 people in the last week about this opportunity. And not just like random people who are well represented here. We spoke to a lot of Black people, especially as part of our outreach, this volunteer outreach that we're doing to make sure you all know about it. If you see someone who needs to know about this opportunity, please tag them. And what I love is y'all are calling in from all over. If in fact, please let me know where you're calling from. I see we have an Oak Creek, Wisconsin in the house. Yes, absolutely. Me, myself, I'm in Seattle, Washington, and I've talked to a lot of people who are on the South and the East Coast, quite a few of you Midwesters out there, people on Pacific time, Mountain time. Even got some folks who were visiting other places. We also have Atlanta in the house. Hello. Hey, Atlanta. I see someone calling from Ohio. I love it. Got some people in the chat. We got some Maryland. Okay, great. Okay, cool. So this is something that affects all of us, right? If this affects your community, being able to have access to reliable, high-speed, affordable internet, let me know in the chat. I see Erica. Hey, Erica. What the first thing I'm going to say is I'm going to give y'all some bolded categories, what I'm calling bolded categories. These are big ideas. They're so big, I'm going to put them in the chat so you can be able to see them amplified. And I'm also going to put them at the very bottom as a banner where my name currently is, if you're joining by social media, and where the chat is if you're joining by Zoom. Great. So the first thing is there's like a lot of sound happening. My apologies, y'all. We are really into making sure that there are funding opportunities to create digital justice, so that we are going beyond just thinking about digital equity. Digital equity is like that people have like the same access to devices, right? Like everyone has the ability to access devices at the same rate, or the internet at the same rate. Digital justice is about something that's like even bigger. We're not talking about just like, do people have devices? We're thinking like, do people have the full access to, the full ability to, the full use of, like, it's not just I have access to a computer, I can use it to do everything I need to thrive. That's what digital justice is essentially about. So we are advocating for digital justice, and we're advocating that we prioritize Black communities and intersectional identities. What does that mean? We need to be prioritizing Black communities, in large part because our communities are the communities that are overrepresented in negative outcomes. So when we think about who has access to those really fast like wires in the ground, oftentimes Black communities are not communities that have the fastest wires. Oftentimes we don't have access to the best jobs when it comes to this digital justice. And so we need to be thinking about prioritizing Black communities. We also need to be thinking about prioritizing intersectional identities. That's one way to say it. I'm also thinking about it. One second, this is really bothering me. Okay, I'm also thinking about it in terms of people who meet multiple categories. How many of us are part of a community that isn't just one thing? Most of us, right? Most of us have many things that affect our lives. So the easy examples are like, oh, race and gender at the same time, right? There's a call out for funding more jobs for women and people of color. But we know that when you look at those two things together, Black women in particular are often like not getting the funding that Black women need to thrive. And so when you just look at women and when you just look at Black people, you're missing out on the unique experiences of Black women. We want to see these funding priorities as we're funding people with disabilities, as we're funding people who are low income. We need to be thinking about these things together so that when we can, we are really specific about meeting the needs where the needs are strongest. So I see a few people. Awesome. Yep. Nope. You're good. You're good with your comments. You're great. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you for dropping the link, Dr. Kathy Tatum, to those of you on Facebook, so that more people can see it. So as we talk about funding opportunities to create digital justice, we have more specific examples. And so we're not just thinking about like underserved communities in a broad way. We're thinking about what are the specific things that communities need in order to survive and thrive. We know that part of what that looks like is diversifying the income streams. So for how many of y'all have seen a grant come out and it's like just for a university? If this is something you've seen, let me know in the chat. You can say, I've seen it. yes, or you see a grant that comes out and it's just for like a very large nonprofit or a very large business, or like it's for like a very big thing, and that those very big things don't necessarily serve your communities. If this sounds like your experience, I want you to say like, I've seen it. Yes, like totally, you get it. Something that lets me know that this is something that you've seen. And if you've never seen it before, that's fine too. But I really want to hear from the people who've seen this before. Okay, Cal has seen it, right? Dr. Kathy Tatum has seen it. HBCUs, right? We've seen opportunities come out like that are just for HBCUs or K through 12, but not for people outside of that. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Erica, for also saying yes. Okay, we've all seen that. Now, part of why that happens is funders make a decision that says, here's who we're going to fund, and they don't necessarily ask the people who are most affected by the issue if this would actually solve their problem. Right now, literally right now, this funder is saying, hey, tell us how to do this. Like, how should we do this? Well, I would propose, along with this team, based on what we've heard, based on the community members we've talked to, based on the interviews that we've done, the community conversations we've done, that when there is funding that's designated for education, like it shouldn't just be for universities. We should have also community colleges, mentorship programs, community-based programs be part of that too. Some of us, we don't operate just in terms of everything's a business or nonprofit. Some of us, we volunteer our time, we show up for community. We have like play aunties, who help us out. We got play cousins. Take it out, I'm recording. We have lots of different things that we are able to do to access and create education and share with each other. This conversation here is happening where you're learning how to influence $48 billion of investment in our communities. And this is something that NTIA should be funding alternative, ways of tapping into education dollars when possible, especially community-based solutions that are led by the people who they represent, right? The next thing I will say related to this idea about funding opportunities to create digital justice, right? And being really specific about like what that looks like is to make sure that rural Black folks, so there we have so many community members, Black community members that are in rural areas, so many. So we need to be thinking about support for digital navigation and digital stewards there. We need to be thinking about our trusted libraries and trusted community sites getting funding. There's so many areas in rural communities that are not getting resources because they're not being prioritized by funders. Now's the time for us to be advocating for that, so our rural communities aren't left out. Our rural Black folks especially aren't being left out. A lot of times when people say rural, they think white. And there's certainly a need to make sure that our rural Black communities are getting investments. And when we aren't specific, when we just say rural, oftentimes we are leaving out the very communities who've been passed over time and time and time again. And now is our opportunity to tell the funder, nah, we're not doing that this time. We also are advocating for making sure that our elders are getting funded, our Black elders, and that we're equipping them with the skills so that they can participate in the economy and do it safely. A lot of our elders don't necessarily know about the unique, risks or opportunities online. And it's not because they're not interested necessarily. It's just that we need funding and support to make sure that it's tailored for our elders. If y'all know elders that need to be connected to the internet, let me know in the chat. Like if you know any elders that would benefit from things like being able to get access to free devices or free or very, 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 very low cost internet, right? Fast internet, so that they're not just kind of, trying to get it and then it doesn't work and then they get frustrated. If you know elders who would really benefit from being able to do like a little side hustle, right? So that they can supplement their income, so that they can generate passive income by selling things like they're, telling us stories, and we're taking those stories, we're putting them into a digital product, right? That it just sells itself. Like they don't really have to do much, like, right? And so I see a few of y'all, thank you for commenting and it's just like, I didn't have quite a few, right? Quite a few elders who would benefit. We need to make sure that this funder is thinking about our elders, because it's so easy for them to slip through the cracks to these funders who don't prioritize it. So the next thing that I would say that I would really love to make sure is included under these funding opportunities to create digital justice is funding that really is able to follow us where we go. So how many people here know or have been, you know somebody or you have been gentrified out of your area? Oop, didn't think it was going to go there, right? How many people have been displaced from a place where they want to go because like they haven't been, you can't afford it anymore. I live in Seattle. It is one of the most expensive cities in the whole country, and we have lost dozens of percents of our Black people in the last 10 years. And part of that means that there are some areas in our county that have a large population of Black folks, and those areas need support. The funding should follow the people, right? The funding should follow where the needs are. The funding should follow where like the possibilities and the solutions lie. And so we need to make sure we are really focusing our attention there. A lot of y'all responded to this one. So I have someone here, I've seen and read about it for years in St. Louis. I have people in the Zoom telling me gentrification on steroids where they're at. And that's happening a lot. And I think that if we look, if we have a chance to make it to 2025, we're looking back on 2022, we'll see that 2020 and 2022 is like a window where there's a lot of this happening because we see people losing their jobs. We see people getting new jobs, but they don't pay as well. We see people who are pushed into entrepreneurship and maybe like don't have the support they need to be successful there immediately. So there's all these things happening. And part of what happens is people get pushed somewhere else. And when we don't have accurate information about where people are, or when we don't prioritize following people where they go, then what do we have? We have a situation where, sure, you may get funding in a place, but the people who need it aren't there anymore. And so the needs aren't being met, and the disparities are actually growing instead of shrinking. The last point that I'll make on this, and a concrete example, right? So here in Seattle, we lost, like I said, dozens of our Black population in the last 10 years. A lot of them are now in an area called Skyway, which is an unincorporated King County. So it is in an urban area. It's not rural, but it's unincorporated. So it's not a city either. And it's in these like in between spaces that we often find Black people. So when we are thinking about where funding should go to follow communities, we can't just be thinking about city and rural. We need to think about race, because when we look at where Black folks get consolidated after gentrification, it is often in these like really kind of amorphous in between middle spaces like unincorporated King County, where people end up. And I see a lot of people responding here too. So super common here in our historically Black neighborhoods. I see Philip is saying a lot of Black people in East Austin. Yes. And a lot of Black people displaced from East Austin, right? East Austin is a place I know very well. I used to live in Austin, and it's unrecognizable now. And a lot of times these resources don't follow people. So we need to make sure that happens. The next big category I want to talk to y'all about is maybe something that makes people feel some kind of way, but it is what it is. The next big recommendation that we have, and I'm going to put it in a banner. So 1 second, I'm going to create one for it so you can kind of see it. We need our underserved communities to be represented in decision-making, not tokenized. And we need this decision-making to be meaningful participation. Tag someone in you think needs to hear this. If you know someone that needs to hear this part in particular, tag them in. Whether that's because they are someone that you know has all these great ideas and are not being taken seriously, or it's someone that hasn't been taking people seriously. Whatever you need to do, tag them in, because this is really important. I see Philip here. It says, yes, I'm going to tell it. I'm going to tell it. Okay, our underserved communities, right? There's a particular definition for underserved communities that this funder is really used to using. Underserved communities are communities that have some access to internet, but like it's not good enough. It's not reliable enough. It's not affordable enough. It's not fast enough, right? It's not accessible. And so that's usually what this funder means when they say underserved communities. But we know that when I said underserved communities, we're probably all imagining probably the same people, right? This underserved communities is not that different from historically marginalized, underrepresented, whatever words you want to use, is our communities, right? And so looking at this, underserved communities must be represented in decision making and at every single step of the way. And so by that, I mean, we need to be at the table when the plans are being made. That's why we're here tonight, right? Talking about this, like taking our notes about what we may want to say, submitting it to this funder, the NTIA, before the deadline tomorrow, which is 2 p.m. Pacific time. We are really honing in on like making sure we're part of the planning process. A lot of states, they haven't made their plans yet of how they're going to spend this money, right? This money hasn't gone to the states yet. This is the time. This funder hasn't made all the rules yet on what they're going to require those states to do, the nonprofits to do, all the subawardees, the contractors, right? They need to hear from us. And so part of being part of the decision-making process, y'all are doing right now. You're showing up. You're tagging in your friends. You're sending emails to people. You're texting them. You're saying, hey, listen, $48 billion is on the line, and we can decide what happens to this money, right? We can influence it. We can inform it. We can demand it. So that decision-making process, this is just the beginning. We need to be thinking about making sure that we can tell this funder, hey, when those states are making their digital equity plans or when they're updating them, there needs to be community at the table, and not just in like a very minor way, not in a consulted only way. Community needs to be deferred to. Community expertise needs to be followed. And it's not one of those things that a lot of funders require upfront. But if this funder does that, that is a game changer. And so we want to encourage we want to have the funder encourage states and tell states, hey, y'all, when you create a decision-making body, whether it's a digital equity forum or it's an advisory group or it's a stakeholder conversation or a task force or one of the many different work group type, roles that they create, that we need to make sure that the underserved populations that we're talking about are at the table. We can't have anymore a digital equity forum that is majority people who've never experienced these things in their lives. How could they provide meaningful feedback on what will serve our communities if they're not part of our communities? It just doesn't work. Like, it's one of those things where you can have like some type of book knowledge about something. You could have studied something really well. I say this as someone who has some advanced degrees under my belt, right? But the only way to really know, to experience, to really understand how multiple systems have failed you is to have been failed by multiple systems and to have seen what it does to your communities, to your families, to your elders, to your youth, to be able to describe it so well you can smell and taste it, to be able to hear it a mile away, and to be able to prevent the train wreck that's coming. We need community at the table, and we need to say that. We need to say it with our full chest, right? Big breath, loud and proud, because if we don't, it won't occur to people who are in these decision-making bodies to do it. So we need to do it now while the funder is like deciding what eligibility criteria. We need to make sure that is like underlined, like highlighted in all the colors. So I know that's a lot. Let me know if you're still with me in the chat. If you are still with me and you want me to keep going, like laying out how we should be spending, like really encouraging this funder to spend $48 billion, let me know. If you're done for tonight, you want me to take a break, you want me to just kind of like ease up a little bit, let me know. I am from a call and response culture. So I really love feedback on how people are doing, and I won't keep going unless you tell me to. So I see y'all. Okay, cool. I say, okay, Tracy, yes, keep going. Okay, cool. Cal's Corner, we rocking with you. Karen, yes, please. Jasmine's over here. I came late, but I'm with you. Awesome. Thank you, y'all. It is super helpful to hear that this is working for you. Here are some specific things I'm going to be putting in my comments on behalf of Black Brilliance Research Project. And if they resonate with you, you can too. Just saying. Feel free to copy paste. And for those of you who are like, Black Brilliance Research Project, what, where? We'll be putting information on both Inclusive Data and Black Brilliance Research Project to make it really easy. Black Brilliance Research Project has been like one of the homes of this work. And so we want to make sure that that is where people go for information, but Inclusive Data will be providing stuff as well. If you find this helpful, please let us know by, letting us know right now, sharing it with people that you care about, or posting on social media. Whether that is in our Black Wealth Challenge, which is, this free challenge that we're doing next week, or it's on your favorite Black business group, talking to your favorite Black chamber, having your chamber also send public comment, literally whatever it takes. Like, that's a great way to thank us. We don't need you to do anything else other than spread the word to community and get the word out. Jasmine asks, is there a replay? This is my first call. Oh, cool. Welcome. Yeah, there's a replay. So for those of you who are on social media, we're going to keep wherever social media it's on. So we're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. We're going to keep it there. And then for those of you who are on the Zoom, when you signed in, you registered. Thank you for doing that. That is going to allow us to send this to you directly. Thanks for your question. Great. So what does this mean, decision making? I mean, I know we all kind of know, but here are the specific things we're going to be asking for. So we want to encourage these digital equity forums, work groups, advisory councils, whatever you're going to call them, to make sure that like people with lived experience are well represented on that body. I would love to see states go all in and have the whole forum or the whole advisory committee or what have you be represented, be well represented, like literally everybody. I would love that. But that's my preference. In terms of what I'm writing, we want to see that we have well representative from the underserved population. The second thing is we want to pay people who are reviewing these applications and these funding mechanisms. When these grants become grants that people can apply for, we need to have reviewers who are part of these communities, who are part of the underserved communities reviewing these applications. How many of y'all have applied for a grant and have this amazing program that actually helps your community, that creates transformation for your community, and you didn't get picked, and the person who got picked doesn't even serve your community or like doesn't do a good job serving your community, and you had to watch that train wreck happen again and again? If that's you, if you've seen this happen where there's funding on the table, you've seen it. Okay, Jasmine's seen it. Like there's funding on the table. There are things that you know how to do well, right? That is your stuff. You are the one that solves that problem. Your community has created this out of nothing, right? Lemonade out of lemons. Y'all got lemon pound cake. Shout out to Tracy West, who makes a great pound cake, just saying. You have all of this stuff that like your community has figured out how to do. And usually with like no resources. And then someone else, some other group, usually it could be a large nonprofit, it could be a big company, you're right, like they have decided to apply, they get the money, they don't even serve the people who really need it. I see a few of y'all are saying this. Philip says, many times, too many times. Yes, I have seen this a lot too. Because I've seen this both on the inclusive data side, because yes, we've helped people get over $18 million in grants for Black small businesses and Black nonprofits. It's true. Yes, you know this. And I've also seen so many grants go to people who don't serve the communities, but they say they do, right? And so one of the things that we can do as community is we can say, hey, you need to pay people with lived experience to review these applications. Because a lot of people with lived experience, when you have lived experience, when you're a part of an underserved population, you get real good at being able to smell some nonsense. Let's say nonsense. I'll keep it super G tonight, PG and G, right? You can smell some nonsense. You can be like, that isn't even gonna work. Like, no, like you don't even have an outreach plan. You don't have any outreach dollars. You say you're going to reach, Black and brown community, but you have no plan for how to do that. This is not a strong grant application. We should not consider it, right? You can have someone that's just like, oh, you say disabilities is going to be a thing that you're going to do, but you have absolutely no experience with disabilities. You think that disability means that everyone's using a wheelchair. You think that people who are using a wheelchair use it every single day at every single time at every single moment. That's not true, right? So you need people who have underserved like experiences to be at these tables to be like, nope, this is nonsense. Let's not fund it. But the way that you can do that, one small way that you can do that is you can pay community to be the grant reviewers, whether that is through a participatory grant making process, which is something that happens where a funder says, hey, I have some money, community, what ideas do you have about how this should be spent? Let's together develop criteria. And like, I'm just going to mostly follow your lead. And okay, cool. These are the criteria. Look, I wrote them down. Okay, cool. Community, what do you think should be funded of these programs? Oh, these ones? Okay, cool. I'll go ahead and fund them, right? That's a thing that happens. That is an established thing that funders can do. And so that is one example of a way that you can pay community to review these grant applications. Another way that you can do it, you can have like reviewers that are like your normal process where the funder's like, hey, I know somebody, I'm going to ask them if they'll review this application. And then you can pay the money. And so instead of volunteering your time, where for some of these applications, like some of these applications, you might have 500 applications. Can you imagine like volunteering to read on purpose over 100 applications and no one's paying you? Who has the luxury of time for that? Definitely not your low income households. Definitely not like your aging adults who are also navigating other constraints. Like maybe they also have disabilities, right? Maybe they also have, you know, kids to take care of because they're watching their grandbabies, right? They have these lives. And the idea that people will volunteer their time to review grant applications is silly, right? I'm just going to say it. If you want people who are actually needing these services to serve as grant reviewers, you need to pay them. So that's another thing that we're advocating for. Really pushing on changing some language. I told you, y'all, I'm not looking for people to consult with historically marginalized and disadvantaged communities. I'm looking for funders to defer to historically marginalized and disadvantaged communities. I'm looking for them to say, okay, y'all lead and we will support. We have staff who can execute on your vision, right? That's what we really need as a community. We need community leadership that's real. And so decision making that's real and not tokenizing. And so those are some examples of things to advocate for there. And the last piece about what this could look like to have communities represented in decision making, communities not be tokenized, is to use strategies and methods that are all about that are designed with that in mind, where it's not an afterthought. One classic example, and it's one of my favorite examples, I'll use it forever, I'm sure, is we could really advocate for evaluation and research, because we know those are going to happen with any funding source, especially $48 billion. They're going to put some data on that. You kidding me? They're going to collect some data. They're going to do some analysis. They're going to do some evaluation, like, duh. And so we need the methods that are actually going to align with how our community expertise can be elevated and can be really recognized for the expertise it is, so that we're not having community paid in like focus groups where people pay you with pizza or $25 gift cards. We are talking about processes where we get to be hired on as consultants for real, and making for real consultant money, where we can be hired on as employees that have benefits, that are paid wages that represent the expertise we bring to be able to solve a hard problem, such as creating more faster internet, more reliable internet, right? More affordable internet. Like, that's a hard problem. And if community is solving it, community should be paid, right? And so participatory action research, for example, is one example of what that looks like. It's research where community members who have that expertise, in this case, we're talking about people who don't have access to really high-speed internet, really reliable internet, really affordable internet, really being the leaders and the experts in terms of doing the research, collecting that data, saying what needs to happen next, offering those evaluations. It doesn't mean community has to do it by itself. Community can be supported, but we need to be prioritizing community's expertise here. We need to be paying people for that expertise, and we need to be making sure that every single step of the way, as we evaluate success, sorry, as we evaluate success, that community is the one that decides. So if this sounds like something you can get behind, if this sounds, I got fire in the comments. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. I received that. If this sounds good to you, let me know. Like, let me know if this is ringing some bells, hitting some accords. Let me know if this sounds like your kind of thing. You're just like, yeah, let me, what'd you say about participatory action research? Participatory action research, y'all, is just when activism and traditional research have a baby. Like, all that is saying, like, community has the expertise, so that's where the expertise lies, and that's who should be doing the actual research, deciding the questions, deciding the analysis, deciding the reporting, deciding what success looks like, because community is the one that has that and has always had that expertise. That's what participatory action research is about. So I'm really excited to be able to push and advocate for that, because it's a specific thing that gives voice, that like creates words to say what community keeps telling you. Like, we know what we need, we know where we are, we know what needs to happen, right? So making sure that community is the one that is recognized for the expertise is essential. The next piece is, okay, cool, thank you. Yeah, I love it. Y'all are just like showing me some love. That's what I'm talking about. I love me some call and response. Love me some feedback. Awesome. So let's go ahead and talk about the next point. This next point is just putting in the chat, and I'm putting in the banner on social media so y'all can see it. And I am coming over here, doing some technology, y'all. All right, let's talk about NTIA, which is the funder, and all these awards and sub-awards. So y'all, this $48 billion that y'all, actually you and dozens of people who are watching right now get to decide, this money, right? This money will be divided out in a lot of different ways. Over $100 million will go to each state, right? Will be getting money. And there will be lots of money on top of other money. There will be matching dollars happening. There's going to be a lot of money flying around. And what I want us to focus on is that there's an opportunity with this funder to actually make it easier for our communities to be able to receive these dollars. So it's great, to hear that there's some like huge grant that's going to come out. But if you don't know how to apply for these grants, like, it's out of reach, right? You're like, what's the point? Tell you what, funders like NTIA, like for this opportunity that you can give feedback on, funders can do a thing called, they can provide technical assistance, they can provide capacity building, they can provide dollars for things like hiring people to help y'all develop your grant proposals. Not all of you have been writing multi-million-dollar grant proposals. Like, I know this because I really try to find people who can do this too, so that we can collaborate. And we know that this is a big need in our communities, especially our underserved communities, and our unserved communities that don't have any wires or access to internet. We know that this is something that's a huge need. So this funder could say, hey, we're going to set aside dollars to help people write their grant proposals. We're going to set aside dollars to help people translate this stuff. A lot of the technology stuff, our communities don't engage with it in the same way because people don't talk like us, right? If I started talking to y'all about how important it is to make sure that there are minimum 100 symmetrical in terms of the internet speeds, you're going to be like, what? Right? Some of y'all know what that is, but a lot of our community doesn't. My kid doesn't know what it is, but I would want my kid to be able to benefit from a program, right? And so what we can do is we can say, hey, funder, you should have people that you hire to translate this stuff into like regular people language so that we're not left out of these opportunities. You should hire people that could be communications professionals, that could be technicians, like that could be a lot of different people, but you need to make this plain. You need to say less, right? You need to make sure that people really understand this so that when this funder says, hey, I got $48 billion, what should I spend it on to, increase, access to affordable, reliable, high-speed internet infrastructure and jobs, like we all know what the assignment is and we can all show up, right? So this funder can fund that. They can fund researchers, including the researchers I'm describing now, who are community members with expertise as leaders, not just as people who show up to a focus group, but the people who say, hey, we need an arts-based approach here. We need some photo boys. We need to be taking pictures of what things look like and saying what needs to happen instead. We need to be doing theater as a research method and really playing out what justice looks like. And we need to use those answers to develop out our digital equity plans, right? We need to be doing a little bit of hip hop, maybe a little bit of jazz. We need to be putting together our faith communities in a particular way. And for people who are not part of the faith communities, here's what we need to do. So we need to say, hey, funder, you need to translate this stuff so that our communities can show up. It can't just be on our own communities to try to educate ourselves about this. You have a responsibility to us as members of the public and as members who are going to be most impacted by the success and the failures of this funding. You need to make sure we understand what's going on. You need to also be supporting wraparound supports. Wraparound supports for jobs is huge. Look, I want women and people of color to have more jobs. We all want that, right? Like, you want that, let me know in the chat, right? You're about women and people of color getting jobs, let me know. So yeah, I want Black folks to have jobs. I also want us to have things like childcare so we can go to those jobs. Like, I want us to have the disability support so that we can go to those jobs and be like fully participating. And unless we tell the funder to do that, a lot of times they don't even think about that. They don't necessarily think about the fact that so many of us that are underserved are also overrepresented in so many different other areas. Like, we need childcare, we need great jobs, we need access to quality education, clean water in some cases, right? And so the wraparound supports, we need there to be funding that's dedicated to that, so that as we implement these programs, right, as we start doing the hiring, as we start doing the outreach, as we start doing the things we know our community needs, then we're able to do that. And the communication expertise that we need also includes a variety of different language access. So many of our community members are immigrants and refugees. So many of our community members are people who really benefit from having access to expanded out languages, whether that's interpretation or translation. So we need to be advocating for that. There's a couple of more funding criteria, and I know that y'all are getting a little tired, and I feel that we will be posting this to our social media. Ooh, Jules says, what about culturally responsive, competent neurodivergence accommodation? Yes. And so usually when people think about neurodivergence, they're thinking about disabilities. They're like, what? People's brains work different? That sounds like a disability. But that's not the only way to think about it. We could be advocating very clearly that culturally responsive communication, culturally responsive supports includes just taking into account people have different learning styles, communication styles, and people have different access. Andre asks a great question. I'm actually going to close this out with this. We're like, what's the IG we can follow for all updates? What a great question. And so, y'all, as I pull this up, I'm so grateful, y'all, for y'all showing up here and really being here with me as I roll out and talk about some of these insights that we have generated from talking to over 500 freaking people about what they want to see. Check out Instagram, Black Brilliance Research. Instagram.com/Black Brilliance Research. That's where we're going to put all the best updates. We will also be sharing this at Inclusive Data's. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. Wow, there's a lot of thank yous. Okay, cool. I'm going to close this out. Y'all, I'm Sean Glaze. I use they, them pronouns. I'm the Chief Consulting Officer for Inclusive Data and the Research Co-Lead and Research Director of Black Brilliance Research Project. We are putting out a number of comments because tomorrow it is due. This funder wants to know what they can do in order to do this job well to make sure we have everything we need for better, faster, reliable, more affordable internet and the jobs that come with that. I've dropped in the chat one more time the link to where you leave public comment. If you want to wait till we post our comments, you can copy paste. That's great. I'm also happy for y'all to do your own thing. Let us know in the chat if you would like more support. But meanwhile, I got to sign off. I'm actually about to teach a bunch of young people how to build some internet. So with that said, again, Sean Glaze with Inclusive Data and Black Brilliance Research Project. This has been great. We have one more session tomorrow in the morning. And if you registered on the Zoom, you know when it is. And we'll be going through and talking about this opportunity one more time and reminding y'all who are on our email list to submit your comments. 10 a.m. Pacific is when I'm back, and I'll see you then. Bye, y'all. Bye, social media. Bye, Zoom. Closing this one out in webinar and closing this one out. Thanks again, y'all. We'll see you next time. Bye.